Welcome to episode 22 on Matchday 22 of the Qatar World Cup. My name is Chris in the Ultimate Football Show podcast. Today with special guests John Gus Ferguson and Peter Gleeson, who are both over in Qatar watching the action live. They join us on the podcast today, as well as Gary Chivers, as we look forward to the third place playoff between Croatia and Morocco, who both failed in their bids to get to the final, losing in the semi-finals as they did, up against probably better teams and certainly up against some great goal scorers. We're very happy to support the lilywhitefoundation.com, advancing young people through sport. For more information, visit lilywhitefoundation.com.
I'm Gary Chivers, and this is the Ultimate Football Show podcast.
So we've spoken to John Gus Ferguson many times now through the episodes here in the Ultimate Football Show podcast. Been great to catch up with him. Massive Tottenham Hotspur fan, and he joins us once again to talk about the World Cup in Qatar and the excitement that it's been. And he's joined by Peter Gleeson, who's an avid Manchester United fan and season ticket holder. And the two guys went to the first semi-final, Argentina and Croatia. Gus, Peter, thanks very much for joining us. Tell us, first of all, what was the atmosphere like in the Argentina-Croatia game? Because it looked fantastic, like even 2 hours before kickoff.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, great to be joining you live from the nice, warm and sunny climes of Qatar. I hope Europe's treating you well. It was wonderful, actually. We can't speak highly enough of the atmosphere here, the positivity of everything, the way everything's organised. It's been incredible, hasn't it, please?
Yeah, very impressed. Right away from arriving at the main international airport, getting straight through, getting a SIM card given to you, straight into a rack of very clean cabs, straight into the town centre, and then getting to the ground. Very easy, very simple. Either jumping in a cab or getting a fantastic metro. It's been brilliant. So been made to feel very welcome, very safe, very happy indeed.
I mean, the build-up before the game, we arrived probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours, just close to 2 hours before kickoff.
Right.
Outside the stadium, you've got the drums and the bands and it's a real party atmosphere everywhere. A huge Argentinian support last night. I mean, it was 80% Argentine, and everyone was great natured. The fans are all kind of mixing, and there's it's what football should be about. Moving away from all the negative stuff at the beginning of the tournament. I think the tournament has come alive in terms of football, and it's been a great spectacle. And then, of course, we were treated to Lionel at his best.
Well, absolutely. I mean, normally those semi-finals, they can be cagey affairs and nobody wants to commit. Nobody wants to make the first mistake. In the end, Croatia made the first mistake, but it was after about 20 minutes, 25 or so. And Argentina just steamrolled them, didn't they? They you could see the difference, whether it was in the mentality or the physicality or just the technique, that Argentina were just much better on the night than Croatia, pretty much from the start.
I think so. I think, for me, the game started off quite slowly, and I think it was, Peter, you said this has 0-0 written all over it. But, after, you're right, Chris, after about 20 minutes, the technical side, certainly, of Argentina was showing through. And as the game wore on, for me, you could see that the Croatian side just didn't have any cutting edge, and also I think age was coming into play as well.
As John said, I thought 0-0 after the first 15-20 minutes, and I thought the goal would hopefully bring the game to life and bring Croatia out more, but I think it just showed the difference between the two sides, and it meant that Argentina just pressed the foot down, and I think the crowd really helped. I mean, the crowd, everyone around us, we were in a neutral area, but everyone around us was Argentina. But it was all very good natured. There was a handful of Croatians. It was brilliant nature, but the crowd got behind them, and then I just think they put their foot to the gas. And at half time, it was really game over in my mind.
We had some Argentinian fans with us, who were still very worried at half time and very nervous, and could see, on the back of the Dutch game, I think that they could see if Croatia scored a fairly early goal in the second half, it would get nervy. But I think, once the third goal went in, I mean, that run from Messi, along the byline, picking out Alvarez, who had the easiest of chances basically to finish. He put it on a plate. And at that stage, it was dead and buried. And I think it was game over.
You were sitting, you sent me some photos and some videos as well. It was really exciting to see just in the lead up to the kickoff itself. Thanks for that. Which end were you? The end where Argentina scored the first half, or where Messi laid that one up for the second half goal?
No, we were quite close to where the first half, where the penalty.
Right. So, and I know there were Argentinian fans around you. You could see that on the video. When Alvarez made that 60-yard run, or what, maybe even 70 yards, it was almost like a running back in the NFL. He picked it up halfway from Messi and kept going and going and going. There must have been a terrific atmosphere around you when that ball went into the net, because everyone was expecting him to pass it at some stage. He kept going and going and finished it off himself. An incredible, solo goal in a big World Cup semi-final.
I think you're right, and I think a lot of people around us were so excited, and it brought you memories almost back to a not quite as strong Maradona goal, where he just kept going and going and going against England, and did it. Now, different class of goal, but yeah, I mean, I think then they realised that they'd got it. They were still nervous, as John said, because of the Dutch game, but and Saudi, but yeah, they were very excited by that stage, and they knew they were on their way to the final.
There was a difference. I what you noticed, especially sort of after about the first half an hour, was that the tackles were strong from Argentina. The passing was crisp. The technical side of it was a different class, and they've really come into the tournament from such a nervy start.
And you could see also, I think they realised that Croatians just didn't really have any threat up front. They didn't have a striker. And we were looking around going, that's where they're missing. They've got no one running in behind like an Alvarez to get on the end of it. And they didn't really look like a threat unless from 25 yards.
There was a couple of times that Perisic got forward and put a ball in, but there was just nobody there.
It's crazy, isn't it? I was looking at the stats yesterday, and Croatia had won one game in the World Cup to get to the semi-final. They've gone through on penalties. They battled hard from midfield and defence. They don't have anyone up front, and it just shows you, if you stick together as a team, sometimes that is far more important than having a Messi or an Mbappe or Harry Kane or whoever it may be in your side. As a team, for these international games, it can be so important. Who would have thought Argentina would be in the final, having been beaten by Saudi Arabia in the first game? It's an incredible situation that those two teams found themselves in.
Well, I'll take you back, Chris, to when we did the first recording back in London a few weeks ago, and I think from the depths of my memory, didn't I tip Argentina?
I think you did. Yeah, you were being very clever at the time, though, weren't you? Because you knew the results. I didn't know the results then.
We said. We said that in the past it's been Messi and some other people, and now it's Messi and a lot of good other people.
Yeah, that's what we said.
And I think that's right. There are some really good players in that Argentinian side, and obviously we've got our own Spurs defender Romero's in there, who looked very solid last night, and didn't give them a bite.
Actually, well, let's talk about some of the individuals, because you're Tottenham, Peter's Man United, so we'll talk about some of your players from the tournament. From Tottenham's point of view, obviously there's disappointment for England against France. We said it was Harry against Hugo, and Hugo got the better of him. But what's, have any Tottenham players really shown up that you said, wow, they've done more than I thought, or have they been pretty much as you would expect in this World Cup?
Well, I always get slammed for being quite negative about Tottenham, as you know, Chris, and Peter's always on me about my negativity. But I think, for me, Romero looked very solid last night, and he's looking, hopefully that he comes back from this break, ready and fit to go again on Boxing Day. You had Richarlison. I thought he was outstanding for Brazil, and I can only see him getting better for us at the Tottenham. Other than that, no one's really stood. I mean, Hugo, he's still a world-class keeper, and he's going to be in a semi-final tonight, and he potentially could be the first captain to lift back-to-back World Cups. So that would be a great way for him to have a great career. I think you go back to 2018 when we probably were littered with Spurs players throughout the World Cup. I can't actually think of too many. We were going through it last night, and I think Man United are up there with 11 players. I think it was.
Well, I can't believe you haven't nicked Modric out of that. So, he used to play for Tottenham, and he was brilliant. But so well done for leaving Modric out.
Yeah, Modric was super class, and he'll always go down as a legend at Tottenham. He was a great player to watch.
And Peter, Manchester United, what about those players? I've been very harsh on Harry Maguire. I've got to admit, before the tournament, I said he shouldn't be playing. He played much better for England than he has done recently at Old Trafford. I mean, he's got John Stones next to him at England. Is that the difference? As a Manchester United fan, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. We were talking last night. Going into the quarterfinals, so 8 teams, there was 11 United players in those 11 teams. There was 11 City players, and then it dropped down then to Madrid and Paris and others. So, top 11 players. Unfortunately, now in the semi-finals, there's only 2 in our central defenders of Martinez at Argentina and who didn't play, and Varane at France. But I think when you look at the other players that have played throughout the tournament, Casemiro, I think, has done well in the Brazil team. I've been disappointed a bit with Anthony and Fred. But I think in the England side, I've been really pleased with the 3, with Rashford, with Shaw, and with Harry Maguire. I'm a huge Maguire fan, as you can imagine. Yes, he's had a difficult time for the last season and a half. Yes, he's been slated. But and you can say he lacks a bit of pace. He's a good, strong, traditional defender. I like him a lot. I'm very pleased that he's our club captain and he shone. And I think with him, I heard your podcast at the start and I heard the conversations and I wanted to shout, look, they need one game. He needs one game and to have a good performance, and the confidence flows through. And that's what will happen with United. I think that's what happened with England. It's all in the mind, and with the confidence going through, if he goes back to United and over Christmas has 2 or 3 good games, clean sheets, I'd love to see him play over Christmas and get his confidence back. Rashford, I think, was fantastic. I was gutted that Southgate didn't bring him on instead of Mount with half an hour to go, because I think he could have made a difference rather than coming on with about 2 minutes to go. And Shaw was just solid as he always was. So I've been happy with the England guys, disappointed with the Brazilians.
I'm happy that you were shouting at me at the podcast. It means I'm doing something right or totally wrong. Either way, it's always a good response, isn't it? Get a response from the listener. No, you're making a mistake. Oh, yeah, that's what you want.
The Lusail Stadium last night, I have to say, it was world class. It's world class, and you look at the infrastructure they've done for this World Cup, and these players are coming out here. And as Peter said, teams just need one good game with the crowds behind them. And I just think the tournament has brought out some of the best players and made some players look great. We've seen some of the Saudi players looking fantastic in defence, giving it their heart. We've seen some of the Ecuador players, Costa Rica players, teams that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And they've all had someone shine and someone... There's been some great results in this tournament. And, who would have predicted Morocco into the semi-final?
Exactly. And finally, before we let you go and enjoy a bit more of the sunshine over there, I can't believe it's -6 over here or something ridiculous. As before we let you go and enjoy that and a nice bit of food as well, I'm sure. Just a quick word on the stadium. Obviously, Tottenham, as you say, Gus, have got the best stadium in the world. I'm not sure Old Trafford's been quite kept to its best over the past few years. So from both of your point of view, Peter, we'll start with you first of all. How did you find the stadium in Qatar? Was it as beautiful and shiny and sparkly as it looks like on the TV?
It is, but it's not just the stadium. I think it's the way they handled it, the way they handled the crowd in a very friendly manner. The security services that were there on standby, but weren't called upon. I thought it was brilliant, and just the number of gates that they were going through for ticket checks to get within 200 meters of the ground. There wasn't just a dozen; there was hundreds of these areas. So there was never a queue. You walked into the ground without queuing. I've never been to a ground in years where you can just, probably Peterborough United, when the last time I went to, when you walked into a ground without having a queue, and the same when you came out. Yes, you were put round to get back to the metro sort of thing, but you got straight onto the trains. It was very well organised, almost Germanic in its organisation, and brilliant. So not just the stadium, the way in which they staffed it was very good.
I think at Peterborough they were queuing to get out, but that's another podcast. And Gus, would you swap the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the Lusail iconic stadium at any time?
No, I wouldn't. But I mean, I think Peter's absolutely right. What impressed was the organisation, the number of female security staff, which just made everyone at ease. So, a lot of the speculation of, how genders are treated unequally in this part of the world, it wasn't at all. It was all very, very good. And as Peter said, hundreds of entrances and just the organisation was fantastic. It was slick. There was not a single problem. Outside the seats were perfectly nice and the stadium's shiny and sparkly, and it's a good stadium. But I think the trouble is when you get to these international games where, of course, there were a handful of genuine Argentinian fans, but the vast majority of the stadium are not Argentinian, and you don't get the kind of same. This is a World Cup semi-final, and you don't get the kind of crackling atmosphere that you would do perhaps at a tournament or a game where it's being held with genuine fans. Yeah. But I can't fault it. The facilities under the concourse, for example, they're not perhaps quite up to the Tottenham Stadium, but it wasn't far short. It was pretty damn good. And as I say, we've got literally nothing other than positive feedback on the way that the people are here, the tournament's being handled. We've been out for a walk around the city centre and everyone's friendly and smiling and happy. And
lovely stuff. Gus Ferguson, big Tottenham fan. Peter Gleeson, big Manchester United fan. Thanks so much for joining us live there from Qatar, and we'll speak to you ahead of the final. I know you're going to the final as well, and we'll have a look at that with you. We'll even preview and get a couple of selections. It's been great speaking to you. Thanks for your time today.
As ever, Chris, thanks.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Ultimate Football Show podcast with Gary Chivers and Chris Barnett. So we've heard from the guys over in Qatar who went to the semi-finals and got a good taste of the atmosphere in that country and in the cities around Doha. We're going to speak to Gary Chivers now once again as he joins us for the third place playoff, which takes place on Saturday between Croatia and Morocco. And Gary, those semi-finals, in the end, the class won through, although Croatia and Morocco built their success getting so far on teamwork. But at the end of the day, individuals from Argentina and France decided the semi-finals, didn't they?
Yeah, and it's also you need goal scorers, Chris, and none of them teams have got a recognised goal scorer who's going to come up with a goal. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's why they go in the transfer market for more money than what other players are. But they both, I think Morocco is done unbelievably well to be where they are and gotten as far as they. I think they've already started partying, by the way. So, but even to finish fourth in this tournament is an outstanding achievement. Croatia's side, like you said, if they had a decent centre forward, they'd have done a lot better.
Yeah, because it's based on midfield, isn't it? Croatia, basically. Great midfield, pretty solid defence as well. Morocco's just based on teamwork. And in the semi-final, they had three players that all thought were going to miss out, all had late tests to see if they could play. They all played, but they all came off early with injuries, and including the captain, Saiz. And you can't lose three players from a team like that when it's a team ethic. It was just one game too many for them.
Yeah, the manager, I suppose, should have stopped probably stopped them from playing. Really, it's your heart, and you're in the first time they've ever been in a semi-final of the World Cup. You've got to be playing in it, and they've obviously let their heart rule their head. And the manager's done exactly the same thing, and trusted his players. But all three of them were injured. They shouldn't have been playing from the start. Made the job a lot difficulter.
Obviously, the World Cup is a great showcase for players. You got players like Hakimi, who's already at Paris Saint-Germain, so you wouldn't imagine him having to go anywhere because he's already at a really big club. But the captain, Saiss, as I say, got injured in the quarter-final, played a little bit in the semi, but he's been monumental for them. And Abramat, the guy in midfield who's won all of those possessions back, those two in particular, they're going to attract attention, aren't they?
I think a lot of players have been moving, Chris. Abramat, like you said, was outstanding. And the work he gets through during the game. And he's one of these guys that closes down, he chases the ball, he wins the ball, and he just pops it off easy. Reminds me of a little bit of N'Golo Kante for Chelsea. He just does the simple thing, doesn't lose the ball, but works ever so hard.
He plays a bit like Makelele as well, because he was a very easy on the eye, wasn't he? Winning balls back and laying off like 5-10 yards.
Yeah. And I mean, Makelele just used to play in front. I tell you what, I wish I had Makelele when I played, because they actually moved Ron Harris into a defensive midfield player in the latter stages of his career. He was brilliant in there, like a Makelele. He just stopped everything before it got to you.
Unfortunately, he had to then also replace the ball after it was split in two when he put his studs through it. But
he kicked everything that moved. He was great. Everyone stayed away from him. Brilliant.
And what about Hakim Ziyech? We've spoken about him many times on the podcast. He's not really had a chance, certainly under Graham Potter at Chelsea. He had a few chances under Thomas Tuchel, and he was patchy, to say the least, but he hasn't played a lot for Potter. Obviously, Italian teams were interested in taking him in January. Is this the time now for Chelsea to cash in, because his fee's going to go up, isn't it, after that World Cup he said? Because a lot of what Morocco did came through him.
Yeah, he was the star man. You've got to say, Hakim Ziyech. But I think he's one of these players, Chris, that just loves to be loved. You know, and he didn't play particularly well for the last Moroccan manager, who put him on the subs bench and didn't play him. All of a sudden, he likes to have the man in charge that believes in him and lets him play. And they've certainly done that with Morocco. That they've hit the right note with him, and you've got to be able to get on with him. He's very, very temperamental, but he's a good, skillful player, and his price is probably doubled.
Yeah, so you can imagine the way Chelsea are dealing at the moment, trying to get the youngest 22, 23-year-olds and maybe, and even younger, that he might be on his way out in January, certainly in the summer, if not already in the winter. Now, this game comes up as a third-place playoff, which, of course, is not the game anybody really wants to play in, because it means you're not going to win anything particularly. Nobody cares about a bronze medal, third place or fourth place, really, except for the families probably of the players that are in it. But Croatia haven't got a goal scorer. We know they've got a great midfield, and they need to step up to score goals if Croatia are going to win this. Morocco haven't really got a goal scorer. They've got that young kid that played up front and did quite well for them. It's El Nesri. He scored a couple of goals. But they've got injuries now, and it's a third-place playoff, and those injured players won't probably step up and test themselves again and get injured again. So how do you see this game going? Could it be quite a low-scoring game where Morocco haven't really got the energy left and haven't got the star players left available to them, and Croatia, for all their working midfield, haven't got any goal scorers?
I mean, you mentioned that Croatian midfield that have been absolutely unbelievable, because they've been the main people that scored the goals for their team. Do you know what? It's a great chance. I think it's a great chance for the managers to give the squad players, because there's nothing on the game. I know finishing third or finishing fourth wouldn't really mean a lot to a player, but it'd be a great chance. And I think both managers will see sense and probably play the players that haven't played. So them three that are injured from Morocco, they definitely won't play. They won't start the game. They'll just be on the bench or just sitting down. The tournament's done really when you come to the third and fourth places. It's you're more looking for the first and second, aren't you? But I'd imagine that they'll play all their second string players.
And who comes out on top in this one? You'd hope it wouldn't go to extra time and penalties. Just get it over and done with.
Yeah, who comes out on top of this one? I'd have to say the team that works their cotton socks off. I think Morocco have done so brilliantly well, but they've run out of steam. They've run out of steam, and they haven't gone over the top of the final hurdle. So I'm going for Croatia to win this game. I fancy Croatia, but it's going to be. I don't know who's going to score for both sides because they lack goals in both teams.
We're very happy to support the LilywhiteFoundation.com, advancing young people through sport. For more information, visit LilywhiteFoundation.com. You're listening to the Ultimate Football Show podcast with Gary Chivers. So thanks to Gary for joining us. My thanks to Gus Ferguson and Peter Gleeson over in Qatar for joining us on this episode. They'll all be back, all three, for episode 23, the final episode of this Qatar World Cup, as we look to the final, and it's a dream final, really, for football fans, as Argentina and Lionel Messi take on France with Kylian Mbappe and co. in what should be a fascinating final. It comes up on Sunday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon UK time. That's when the final is played. We'll be sending a podcast out before that for you to enjoy. So join us then if you can. We'll see you then.